Hi, this is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, and this is episode 55. And today's date is October 8th, 2022. I haven't done an update for a very, very long time, so somewhat bear with me as I learn how to do this again. But this is an important update because I think the next 5 months are very important months in the US and in the world, and I'm going to specify certain dates that I think you can focus on, and in giving you a timeline of when things may get worse. I'll also be giving you an end point when I think we may have a light at the end of the tunnel here at a certain period. So anyway, let's look at what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to give you an update on the US chart, and then go through sort of month by month. But October, we're into October already. Look specifically at the date of the November election, and then look at what's happening in January and February. And then I'll wrap up by looking at several markets: the Dow Jones, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and the US dollar. Okay, so this is a chart of the US, and the USA chart is in the middle ring here where my cursor is. I use the chart that has Sagittarius on the ascendant. I won't go into why I believe that, but to me it just fits a lot better than the Gemini chart, the Gemini ascendant chart. And we have the current transits of the planets in the sky right now in the outer ring. And if you follow astrology, or if you look back at my other videos or my website, astroindicator.com, you know that we're going through a very critical period in our history where we have the transit of Pluto is transiting our second house, and currently it is conjunct Pluto in the US chart. You can see it there. And what's happening tomorrow, Sunday, October 8th, is that from the Earth standpoint, the direction of Pluto is changing directions. It's going into what's called a station. It's going direct, and whenever a planet is stationary, apparently stationary, that energy, that planet, is intensified. And for Pluto, this has been going on for several days prior to October 8th, and it'll happen for at least several days afterwards. So we're going through a more intense Pluto period where crisis, power games, power plays, the deep state, the totalitarian interests in the world may, during this period of time, amp up their energy, amp up their actions in some fashion. And so this is a little bit of a warning, because in addition to the station that is taking place tomorrow, with Pluto kind of stopping here at 26 degrees and then starting to move forward, tomorrow we have a number of other planets that are in other aspects, planetary aspects, that give me some concern. And some of those things is that we have, if you look at my cursor, we have Mars conjunct Mars tomorrow. Again, this is Mars in the sky. It's essentially at the same position where Mars is at in the US birth chart. So we have not only an increase, an amplification of Pluto energy, dark intensity, deep forces, manipulation, totalitarian interests, but we have Mars energy, which is, warlike, militaristic, sort of self-assertion taking place. And so, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but if something big happened, on the global scale stage, it wouldn't surprise me at all. So just kind of be prepared for that. There's more minor things going on. Sun Venus is square in the sky. We have out here. We have Sun Venus is square the sun. Moon is square the sun. And so, the people who feel like they're pulling the strings in the behind the scenes in the U.S., it's in this window, in this time period, where they may try to do something, larger, and try to take even more control over, what's going on in Ukraine or whatever. So just forewarned is forearmed, and get rid of that. So let's see. As we move towards the end of the month, we have Saturn going into its station. So Saturn is down here. I don't know if I need to draw it in every time, but Saturn is transiting in the sky, and it will be stopping. Okay, so I moved the chart ahead to October 23rd. So Saturn is going to be stopping. It's going to be extra Saturnian during that period of time, several days before and after the 23rd. It's happening while Pluto is conjunct Pluto, so both the darker forces in the symbols of astrology are going to be extra strong in this month. And what do we have happening in November? Well, we have the election coming up. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there is some move afoot to create a false flag crisis, on the world stage or internally, to try to derail the elections. And I see it I just see it, the potential there, at least in the astrology that's taking place during this month. So let's look at the election. This is the chart of the election, November 8th. And what's very interesting here is that we have Sun Mercury by transit is opposite the transiting Uranus. So I'm just going to draw that in so that you can see what's going on here. So we have Sun Mercury, we have Uranus on the opposite side by transit, and they are just opposite each other right here. Okay, well, that's just particularly interesting because right on that day that happens to be election, that day will be characterized very likely to be a day where there's something surprising, kind of shocking, come out of left field on the election. And so, I think something's up, and what leads me to think that the results may at least be delayed is that this opposition that you see here is squaring Saturn in the sky. So let me draw that in. So, oops. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong button. Here we go. So here's Saturn by transit, and Saturn is squaring these other bodies. So in addition to the shock value of a Uranus opposite Sun taking place on that day, you have to add the energy of Saturn, which could delay, forestall, slow down the confirmation of results. And so, again, the potential's there, the probability is high, and so it wouldn't surprise me at all if, we really don't know the outcome. There may be something, I'm in the camp of, indeed something, cheating could go on, something fishy could go on, and it may take a while to sort itself out. In addition, we have, I didn't mention it earlier, but we have, this Pluto conjunction taking place, but also its opposite Mercury. And this combination can be interpreted many ways, but it brings in the intelligence community, it brings in the media, it brings in, the what I feel is ongoing propaganda and manipulation. I mean, at this point, if anybody's just getting their news from the mainstream media, they're just getting brainwashed. So, fortunately, we have the internet, and if a person does some digging, they can find things that are more representative of the truth, in my humble opinion. Okay, so moving on, here's Pluto conjunct Pluto in December. So we went through the station of Pluto. Now, if you look at my cursor, it's at 27. You see Pluto at 27. Well, that's exactly where, in the birth chart of the U.S., it's at 27. Again, sort of like the station, but again, when it's exact, then you get an intensification of that Pluto energy. And there is a plus side of Pluto. I mean, it reveals negative forces that are at work in the world, dark, evil forces that are at work in the world. It brings that reality to the surface, and more people realize that something really needs to change. And on the most positive notes, things do change in the future. But until that happens, disintegration, and evil basically can be ruling the world. And so I'm pointing out periods where this energy is peaking, and that will be taking place kind of during the week of right around the 1st of the year, the end of December, right into the 1st of January. We have this Pluto conjunction. And oddly enough, in addition to that signature taking place, we have Mars again has gone retrograde and is now conjunct the USA descendant. So a lot of conflict and strife and is going to be part of the picture. I haven't mentioned it yet, but we have Neptune conjunct Neptune taking place by transit in the U.S. chart. And so here's Neptune natally, and here's Neptune down here by transit. And so, my interpretation of this is that, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of fanaticism happening. Ideologies are kind of run amok, and it's being tied into a very domineering, top-down, totalitarian push in the world. And so I see it happening in the U.S., but I see it happening in the world. And maybe it's originating in the U.S. That's one way of looking at that. Okay. So let's move on. Oh, well, this is the last one. So moving on into February, kind of a similar thing is happening with Saturn. Again, we're going to go through a heightened Saturn period in February, early February, because Saturn by transit is going to be conjunct the U.S. moon, the natal moon. So if you look at my cursor, 26 of Aquarius, 26 of Aquarius. And so things are going to be tough, I think, between now through into March of next year. But after that, some of these difficult, dark, and really evil energies may start to wane, may meet their karma, may be confronted and hopefully overcome. So I feel that we're going through the most difficult time over the next 3, 4, 5 months of this whole 3 or 4 year period. And that's primarily why I wanted to do this video. Okay, so moving on to the financial markets. One, we all know that the whole world is suffering from very difficult inflation. And one reason for that, particularly outside of the U.S., is that the U.S. dollar index is quite high. And that is causing extra high inflation in other countries, because all these currencies are valued relative to each other. And it just so happens that the US dollar index is high relative to the euro and the yen and the yuan and so forth. But there's a real debate as to why the Federal Reserve is so radically and quickly raising interest rates. Are they intentionally trying to undermine the economies of other countries or even our own economy? Because I won't go into the whole thing, but as you raise interest rates, you increase the servicing of debt, and we have debt, levels that are unprecedented in the U.S. and elsewhere. And so this is just a recipe for a huge credit crisis, a crisis in the banking system, and so forth. I'm just citing several articles here where some people are speculating that this is being done intentionally. And here's an article from a writer. I'm not sure if I pronounce his name right. His name is Matthew. What's Matthew's last name? I'm forgetting, but it's at signalsmatter.com. And so, one interesting paragraph in this article is that he's saying, I'll just read it right here. It is my strong belief that one of the primary motives behind the current rate policy to strengthen the U.S. dollar has been to help the U.S. government break the financial back of Russia, which, like all its prior policy sanctions based on the reinvigorated Russian currency trade surpluses and multilateral trade agreements, is failing. Okay, so this plan to, destroy Russia through absconding with their, U.S. reserves that they had on hold, and putting really, really stringent sanctions on them has been backfired. Why is that? Because Russia has moved their attention to other parts of the world that are much more supportive to dealing and trading with Russia now than they have been in the past. And so this attempt to weaponize the U.S. dollar by increasing interest rates and undermining the currencies of Russia and other countries, may not work at all, at least according to this author. And this trading bloc outside of Russia that is becoming more integrated and coordinated to work together as separate from the U.S. is often called the Global South. It's called the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And they're quickly, they've proposed it, and now they're apparently quickly organizing an alternative currency to the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. So this alternative currency would be used to settle their trades, and they wouldn't then need the U.S. dollar in the quantity that it's required today. And the U.S. dollar would be used less and less. And if this was implemented, particularly in the short term, then the U.S. dollar would really take a hit. And when the U.S. dollar takes a hit, inflation goes higher. Okay, this is an article, an interview of Michael Hudson, who's a professor of economics, fairly well-known economist. The website, I think, is thecradle.com. And I'll just read this paragraph. It says, "Are we reaching the point when the key players of the Global South, over 100 nations, finally get their act together and decide to go for broke and stop the U.S. from keeping the artificial neoliberal global economy in a state of perpetual coma? This means the only possible option, as you have outlined, is to set up a parallel global currency bypassing the U.S. dollar, while the usual suspects float the notion of a Bretton Woods III at best. Is the fire, finance, insurance, real estate, financial casino omnipotent enough to smash any possible competition? Do you envisage any other practical mechanisms apart from what is being discussed by BRICS and these other trade organizations. And essentially, Hudson says what's happened just within the last year has really ratcheted up the urgency to form this alternative trade currency. And so everybody is watching this very closely because it could have a huge impact on the value of the US dollar. I mean, the US dollar index has been going up, but clearly if you go to the grocery store right now, you know this, the value of your dollars is going down, okay? That could get exacerbated, that could increase manyfold if this alternative trading currency is created and adopted quickly by all these 100 other nations in the world, primarily because they're fed up with having to deal with the U.S. and its use of the dollar kind of as a weapon, and they would rather inject more fairness in their trading, systems and practices. So you have to put this on your radar, because this could affect your budget and your bottom line, and this could happen within 6 months. I mean, that's my guess. This could happen within 6 months. Okay, let's look at the US dollar. Okay, so on my website, astroindicator.com, I use astrology to forecast potential turning points in different markets. I usually look at 6 markets. And here I'm just presenting the US dollar index first because I've been talking about it. Well, here, each of these vertical lines represents a potentially important date coming up. But it's vital to remember that I completely buy into the idea of combining indicators. There's no holy grail here of looking at a date and thinking something's definitely going to happen, because you have to combine the technical indicators, what's happening with the Federal Reserve, what's happening with economic reports and so forth. But for example, what happened with the dollar here going back a couple weeks is that this kind of yellow gold line, I knew that it was had the potential to be a quite bullish time period for the US dollar, and that it could rally at that point. It took a couple days to get kicked into gear, but immediately afterwards. So I was reporting on this, 2 weeks prior to it occurring. And just a couple days afterwards, we had this big rally. But as you note, it rallied right up to this trend line resistance that was already established and then stopped, and now it's fallen back. Now we're getting a little bump again, and we have other potential points coming up in the future where a rally could, other rallies could occur. But at this point, I'm looking at this date and this brief boost in price as being one that didn't really maintain itself at this point. And it was so bullish that I would have suspected a bounce rather than it dropping down a little bit more. So even though on the momentum indicators, the RSI and MACD that we have down here, even though they've dropped a lot and we're kind of due for a little bounce, when you look at the weekly momentum indicators, we are still way, way overbought. And this potentially could be, the last pop for the US dollar up to this, 115, 116 level. And that's really a possibility, because we are now past this time window, this time period where a large bullish move was supposed to happen. It did happen, but now the farther we get away from it, the more I think we're running out of gas. And so that is my working hypothesis at the moment with the USD. And this is important because if you're a trader, you know that you have correlations with many other markets that are are trading off of what's happening with the U.S. dollar, precious metals, cryptocurrencies, etc. So check out my website, astroindicator.com, and And I comment on each of these upcoming dates as we get close to them. So I use astrology with the financial markets on a very short-term basis, and I integrate other indicators, with the astrology. Here's the Dow Jones. And again, we had a period about a month ago where I knew we were going to get a bounce. Okay, this double line, gold line here. We got a bounce, but it wasn't a very impressive bounce. In fact, it lasted 4 days. And then, when we had that big red candle day, for a lot of technical traders, that was, big warning flag that this rally was ending. But for me, it was even doubly meaningful because I knew that it was coming close at the heels of a bullish indicator. And when it dropped beneath this neckline, it was a certainty in my book that we were heading south. We don't have a lot of bullish things on the horizon. This market could go lower. The only thing that's holding it up is that we are very oversold on the MACD down here. And so we may trade sideways for a little while and get little bumps from out of these key dates that I have indicated in these horizontal lines. Okay, gold. Okay, this is an important time period for gold because gold has been rallying based off the rally in silver. Silver is the stronger market. When I incorporate the astrology, I'll point that out in a minute when we look at the silver chart. But gold has been in a downtrend. If you look at the last several astro indicator dates here, each has been at a peak in the market, and which when you evaluate that contextually, you see that this is not a strong market. It is responding by breaking down after each of these dates. Now, in a bullish trending market, primarily, maybe not every time, but primarily you would see the opposite occur. Right now, on Friday, we had a bullish date, and it's maybe too early to tell. But because of some economic reports that came out Friday that were sort of negative to gold, we had a little bit of a pullback. But Monday is going to be, this Monday, the 10th, October 10th, will tell me a lot about what's happening with the precious metal markets, because we have something in silver that should give silver a boost, which should support gold, etc. Plus, we had a bullish astro date, a key date on Friday. But again, I combine that with the fundamentals. Some reports came out that were not that bullish, and so we didn't really get the response I thought we would get. So at the moment, this gold market is still, at this very moment, looking like it's still trending downwards. If it wasn't for silver, which I'll get to right now, gold wouldn't have had this recent rally. So let's look at silver. So as opposed to gold, look what happened here. See my cursor? We had a big pop on this bullish date, okay? Sometimes the red dates are reversals, so this was not a surprise. It was acting like a reversal date, and we dropped back down. Another gold key date, we got a pop-up, another pop-up on this green line, and now on Monday, we have another date which should, the silver price should rally to some extent. And so we will see. And this little pullback was probably beneficial because we were getting a little overbought in the RSI. So we've kind of pulled back a little bit there. So watch Monday. If we get a green candle, particularly up above this resistance line where my cursor is, silver's probably going to go higher. Okay, Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin, oddly enough, has an important date happening Monday as well. And it's facing a lot of resistance. It dipped. It's trying to get over the 50-day moving average. It has trend line, a very important trend line here. But we will see. Surprisingly, Bitcoin has decoupled from tracking like the Dow Jones Industrials or the NASDAQ, which it had been tracking. Those markets have been dropping, whereas Bitcoin over the last 2-3 weeks has been trading sideways. This is a positive for Bitcoin because now it seems to be definite that it is uncoupled, disconnected from that influence. And so if we get a pop, a rally, higher prices on the 10th or the 11th or 12th, you got to give it a little bit of a window, then that will be very encouraging for the Bitcoin crowd. And so that's it for today. If you go over to astroindicator.com and leave me your email address so that I can send you updates and notices when I do another video, I'll send you a free USA astrology forecast, kind of reviewing things that I said today, but going further into next year. So if you go to astroindicator.com, you'll see a pop-up window, and send me your email. I'll put you on my newsletter list, and I will send you this this forecast, which is several. I forget how long it is, but it is, maybe 10-12 pages long. So anyway, that's it for today. My name is Stephen. Thank you again, and hopefully I'll start doing these a little bit more often. Bye for now.